Welcome to What is Going for new thought from the edge of Each week on Time's flagship radio show, veteran broadcaster, author, and media consultant Sandy Sedgbeer conducts thought-provoking interviews with inspirational authors, artists, musicians, scientists, speakers, and filmmakers who are working at the point where spirituality and science meet consciousness at the very edge of Here is your host, Sandy Sedgbeer.
Hello. Born into a traditional Roman Catholic military family where discussions of UFOs and aliens were unthinkable, Debbie Solaris's life took an extraordinary turn when she awakened to her true cosmic lineage. Now an interdimensional traveler, galactic historian, and ascension coach, she's become a beacon for those seeking to uncover their cosmic origins, reconnect with their star lineages, rediscover their soul's gifts and missions, and embrace their inner light and divine selves. Debbie Solaris, welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's been...
So a little bit about your background. You had ordinary childhood. You spent your formative years travelling Europe and Australia with your military family. Several years active duty in the military, earned a bachelor's degree in science, worked in the environmental field as a civilian, all with not a smidgen of knowledge or interest in extraterrestrials.
No, none whatsoever. You pretty much got it down to 2 sentences there. I'm impressed. But
so what happened to change that?
Well, I had my own experience. I had a very extraordinary experience in 2012, which completely changed my life. So just to give you the overview of what happened, I do think some of my consciousness around extraterrestrials were starting to expand because my husband and partner at the time, and he still is my partner, but was very interested in UFOs. So it was just starting to become like, oh, maybe it's possible, but I was still very skeptical. I wasn't like a big advocate or had any real true interest in extraterrestrials. I mean, to me, it was just like, okay, yeah, that sounds way out there. And like you mentioned, I was working in a pretty much a very conservative field, a science field. I was an environmental health specialist for a number of years. What changed my entire path started with a prayer. So, of course, in 2012, there was a lot of transition, so there was a lot of things going on during that year. I would say it was a pivotal year for ascension. At least the beginning parts of it. But there was a lot of talk about the Mayan calendar and the timelines changing, so that was a concern. And then also there was a lot of things happening in the United States regarding our elections, so things took I think a turn for the worse for quite a while in the United States. So I was, understandably concerned, and I was concerned about the environment. I was concerned about extinction of entire animal species, since I, have an environmental background. So I sent out a prayer one night to the universe. I just asked for assistance for planet Earth. I felt like we really needed help here. And I was sending this prayer out to any higher dimensional being that would care to listen, so, said the prayer, forgot about it. 2 weeks had passed by. This was in May of that year. And then in later that month, I had a extraordinary experience where I was sleeping, or I fell asleep. But when I came to a certain consciousness, I was in a different reality. And it wasn't a dream because I've had lots of dreams, and dreams are usually fairly vague, even the more lucid ones. And this seemed very crystal clear. It was like a really different experience. So I was looking around this the space, and it looked like an extraterrestrial craft. I mean, I had read enough articles to kind of understand what one might have looked like, but this craft was different. It wasn't metallic. It didn't look like it was geoengineered or reversed engineered or anything like that. It was not made of materials I've ever seen. It was mostly light and plasma-like materials. And I had encounters with extraterrestrial beings. And I do believe I had what was called an out-of-body experience, where my consciousness was on board this craft, but maybe my physical body wasn't. But when I looked at myself, when I was on board this craft, it was, I looked like myself. I mean, I didn't look like different or anything like that. I did encounter initially 4 or 5 extraterrestrial beings. The ship itself almost seemed sentient, like it had its own consciousness. It was leading me to a certain space within the ship. And so I just kind of followed along, and I found myself in this large room, and there was, I would say, about 5 extraterrestrial beings waiting for me there. And I knew they were extraterrestrial because I've never seen beings like that. They didn't look like anything from human, and they did not look like gray aliens or anything that, you might read about in UFO articles. So I was able to communicate with these beings through telepathy. So I would try to answer questions about I was trying to come up with questions basically about, just the general questions like, what is this? Where am I? What's going on? And before I could even finish the question in my head, these beings were answering me through telepathy. They told me they were from a star system called Arcturus in the Bootes constellation. It's not terribly far from Earth. It's like 37 light years. And they showed me on a holographic device within this room that we were in. So we were within this globe that had this hologram that they showed me where this place was located. And they told me that the reason why they had brought me on board, because I was like, I'm nobody special, why me? I'm not, I would be the least likeliest person, to be brought on board a starship. But they told me it was because they heard my prayer. And so they felt like I was ready to take on my mission. And I was kind of weird. It was like, what mission? Like what the heck? So these beings basically told me that I was actually a soul that originated from their star system, that I was part of their soul group or their star family, which amazed me because I thought I was all, just human. I didn't think I had any extraterrestrial connections whatsoever. It was kind of an extraordinary experience in that I asked a lot of questions about what was going on Earth. They tried to answer it, I think, as simply as they possibly could. They kept telling me that everything here on Earth is an illusion, especially in the 3D reality, that it's a false matrix construct, and that we had chosen to play a part, kind of almost like a video game in a way. But so there's, a light side and a dark side, and, we're all playing these roles as, human in our human avatar. And they answered a lot of questions also about just what is government, what is religion, and, our societal constructs here on Earth. And then they allowed me to, they showed me around the ship a little bit, and they allowed me to kind of wander off on my own on board the ship, where I encountered other beings that were not Arcturians. These beings were also humanoid to a certain extent, but they were different species. So like Pleiadian, Syrians, those types of things. And it was weird. I could kind of tell, like, oh yeah, that looks like a Syrian. That looks like a Pleiadian. And so I was in the middle of the ship, in the atrium part of the ship, and there was hundreds of these beings that, they all looked kind of different. And I had some encounters with some of them. And then the next thing I knew, I woke up and I was back in my bed. This was in 2012. I had a second experience in December of the same year, same ship, same beings. I had mostly encounters with a couple of Pleiadian beings. So the first visit was mostly Arcturians. The second visit was with a couple of Pleiadian beings. And then the second visit wasn't quite as long, or didn't last as long as the first one. But they shared some personal information regarding, I think, just some individuals that were within my inner circle. And then particularly my father committed suicide a few years ago. So they were just giving me some information about that. And then it was the same thing. I came back and it was back in my bed, and that was it. So when you have those types of experiences, especially after the first one, I knew something extraordinary had happened. I just knew at that point that, hey, something really strange just happened. And of course, the first person I told was my husband. He didn't believe me. He thought I was having a weird dream. But so my husband had, he just was telling me, maybe it was just a dream. And I said, no, it was too real. It was just that, the details were really sharp, and I don't think it was a dream. And I noticed after the first experience, and even after the second experience, that my extrasensory perception, if you want to call it that, just really expanded. It just, enhanced, where I was seeing UFOs all the time in the sky. I was starting to see auras around things. I was downloading information about galactic events just in my head, like all of a sudden I had knew this information. And initially I thought I was going crazy, so I thought, okay, this isn't, doesn't seem, real, like I don't know where I picked this up from, so I started taking a lot of spiritual classes. I'm fortunate that I live in Colorado, where we have a very thriving spiritual community here. There's lots of spiritual offerings. So I took one class after another for a span of 2 years. And I didn't really tell too many people about my experience, especially not people at work. I was still working my 3D job, at the time. But and I didn't tell even my family, that I had this experience. I did do a lot of research, so I started reading a lot of books. I must have read, I don't know, at least a couple of hundred books, during that time, just trying to figure out what's going on. Is this real? And the books I was finding actually collaborated with the downloads I was getting, So for instance, I don't know if you're familiar with Lissa Royale Holt, and Dolores Cannon. They were writing about the same things I was seeing. And at the time, I didn't realize where I was getting this information from. Eventually in 2014, I started taking Reiki classes. So I took some Reiki classes locally in my hometown here of Castle Rock, which is just south of Denver. And I was telling my teacher about my experiences, and she told me that she thought I was getting information from the Akashic records. This was my first time ever hearing about the Akashic records. And she says, "Oh, by the way, I teach classes on how to access the records." So I was like, "Oh, I need to sign up for those classes." So that's what started me on my path of exploring the Akashic records. Was I started taking these classes, and I just discovered, oh, I'm pretty good at accessing these records. I don't know why, but I'm pretty good at downloading information. So initially, I just started having a little part-time practice where I was just doing readings for people. And at the time, it was kind of like a hobby, like, oh, I'm just making a little money, doing these nice little readings for people. But the more I was doing the readings, the more information I was downloading. And then I started doing presentations throughout the Front Range of Colorado. Started doing readings for quite a few folks that worked at Gaia TV. And that's how I got my first interview on Gaia, was because they started to get to know me and my work, and they thought, yeah, we need to get her on the show, So, so that's pretty much how this became like a full-time thing, So,
So,
I did retire from my 3D job, or my day job, if you want to call it that, in 2019 to pursue this, full time. So, and I guess the
you
rest
have
is here.
an absolutely beautiful website. I look at those images there, and I'm sure I'm not the first person who said it. They are very compelling, very attractive. Who created those images?
I hired artists to do some AI work using my descriptions of these beings. And he did a very nice job. I would say the majority of the images are really close to how I was seeing these beings, and how I describe them, when I do readings for people. So, and the whole point of creating that section in my website is to give people like a place to go where they can get information on these extraterrestrial beings just in one spot, So, because I noticed, when I was doing my own research, throughout the years, I'd have to go to this website to read about Pleiadians, and then I have to go to this other website to read about Arcturians, and then maybe I'd pick up a piece of information here and a piece of information there. And I wanted something a little bit more comprehensive, that was more altogether. So, so the website was the first part of that. And eventually, as I get time, I'll expand and add some more species of beings. But I do want to work on a book. So we're working on a book this year. So
Yeah,
people can have all this information in a book.
the information. I mean, there's information that some of us have read in other places, but there's a lot of information that we've never seen.
Hmm.
I was struck by one of the things that, you said, that there is the galactic history has been hidden from humanity for thousands of years. Now, I know that it's been said, and I've seen it in a few places, that many of the wars in the Middle East have a covert purpose to
Hmm.
find and steal or destroy ancient texts and tablets
Hmm.
holding information.
I believe that too. I think the information has been purposefully hidden from us because if humans realize their galactic connections or galactic heritage, there is no stopping us, because we're considered to be genetic royalty in the eyes of, the extraterrestrial beings that are out there, because we're kind of like a Heinz 57 of quite a few different star races. So we kind of got the best and the worst of all the DNA that's been, contributed to the human genome. But yes, I do believe that it was purposeful. That was why, during the Council of Nicaea, back in the early before the fall of Rome, certain books were taken out of the Bible because they did not want us to discover that we're greater than what they wanted us to believe. So pretty much the message that we get, when we're growing up. I know this was the case with me, because I was born in the early 60s, and we were taught that you're just a human, you just have one lifetime. There's no such thing as reincarnation. Jesus is your savior, So, the only, and you have to go through, I was, raised Roman Catholic, as you were mentioning before. So, you have to go through a priest, to get your, sins wiped out, So,
Right. Well,
and, it's like, there's no hope for you. You're just a human.
yeah.
All you can hope for is maybe have a nice life with, a job and a family, and and that's it. So and they don't talk about us having a direct connection with God. So that always bothered. Like, why do we have to go through somebody else?
Yeah.
And I think this is the Starseed aspect of me that was always asking questions, even as a kid, like, why are things the way they are? It doesn't make sense, So when I did have that visit with the, Arcturians, they explained a lot of that. It's like, wow, yeah, that makes sense. This is just a human construct. It's not even real. It's just something that a bunch of humans that want to control the masses created. So yeah, absolutely, you're right on target. With what you said about some of the conflicts in the Middle East. And that's why it's been so ongoing for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and it never stops. And some of these groups are hell-bent on destroying ancient tombs and artifacts because they do not want us to get our hands on that information.
Yeah. I don't
That's why.
remember where I heard it, but I remember a story that somebody told me, and would have been somebody who I would believe, someone with credentials,
Mhm.
about somebody who was in the military that told them that they were sent at short notice to certain places, Iran, Iraq, etc. And they thought when they were deployed there, they thought it was because they were to fight. They weren't. Their job was to get all of this material from a particular site and ship it back to America, pack it up, ship it. And this guy said, there were ancient books, there was all kinds of tablets, all kinds of stuff. So I think, we've heard this for years since the First and Second World Wars.
Definitely. Yeah,
There was
definitely.
a gathering of, all of the material. Who knows where it's going? On your website, you give some wonderful descriptions of the different kinds of races and the origin story. Could you just briefly, give us an overview of the origin story and how we got to be here?
Yeah. I'll have to give the super abridged version because it's a long story. But so basically, humanity as we know it, or the humanoid races, were created in the Lyra system, at least in our universe. So the Adam Karman form, so the two arms, the two legs, that's a form that I think is dispersed throughout multiple universes. So it seems to work, so that's why we all kind of look somewhat similar, so even the extraterrestrial beings, there are non-humanoid extraterrestrial beings out there, but I'm specifically focusing on the humanoid races. So the humanoid races, basically, so everything started in Andromeda Galaxy. So the Milky Way was created to be kind of the backdrop of our separation from Source. So each multiple universe goes through this experience. So as our universe's turn, And it was supposed to happen in Andromeda Galaxy. Andromeda Galaxy beings that were these light beings, they were co-creator beings, created this alternate galaxy called the Milky Way. So the Milky Way separated from Andromeda Galaxy. There was a portal that was created called the Antares Stargate, where it was a portal between these two galaxies. Now, Antares is in the Scorpio constellation, and Galactic Center is actually located in our galaxy between Scorpio and Sagittarius. I think the exact location is 28 degrees Sagittarius. Now, there was galactic councils that were deciding, okay, how we're going to play out this experience, of separating from source. And so they decided to create physical life in the Lyra system. So Lyra is a very small constellation, only has 13 stars. And they used that location because it was fairly close to Galactic Center, and also because it had the conditions that were very favorable for human and sentient life, So even today, some of the exoplanets that are considered to be inhabitable in our galaxy, quite a few of them are located in Lyra, so this is a scientific fact. So the co-creator beings, some people call them the Elohim or the Watchers, or, whatever you want to call them, the co-creators created physicality in Lyra, and they had beautiful paradise planets. They existed there for thousands and thousands of years, in complete paradise, So I think this is where some of our stories about, the Garden of Eden came from. I see a lot of correlations between the Garden of Eden story and what happened in Lyra, So there was these beautiful beings that were created there, and they created not just one, but two human races. So there was the blue-skinned Vega race. So the Vega is a star in the Lyra constellation. It's also known as Alpha Lyrae. It's actually a major star system. So these beings were more the representation of Mother Goddess consciousness. Now, the white Lyrans were created in the other star systems in Lyra and in their planets, and they were more the representation of Father God consciousness. So this is just the basic template of source consciousness. So these beings coexisted with each other, for thousands of years. Everything kind of came to a head when there was another constellation called Draco. So here's Lyra and here's Draco. Draco's right next door to Lyra. There was reptilian beings that lived in this Draco system. And these were beings that were service to self. They just wanted to conquer other systems for their own purposes. So these beings decided they wanted to conquer Lyra because of its resources. It had beautiful paradise planets with multiple resources. So they ambushed the Lyran planets. Lyra and Draco went into a big war. And obviously the Draconians had much better technology. They had technology for billions of years. Whereas the Lyrans were kind of new to technology. So obviously the Lyrans lost a war, so a lot of the planets got wiped out. I would say about 5 planets, I think, got wiped out. They got annihilated. I think they say that 50 million Lyrans lost their lives. This is according to Lissa Royale Holt. And this is something I saw in the records too. And then the survivors of the wars just dispersed out into different systems throughout the galaxy. So this is why we have different races of beings. So we have, beings that live in Sirius. We have beings that live in the Pleiades. We have beings throughout. So there are some exceptions. The Arcturians were all their own consciousness. They weren't really descendants of Lyran refugees, unlike a lot of the other races. And there's, exceptions in Andromeda constellation. They had some species of beings there, and Sirius B that were not necessarily descendants of Lyran refugees. But I would say a lot of the humanoid races, including those of us here on Earth, were descendants of those refugees. There was even quite a few of them that ended up on Earth. So just kind of making the story a little faster here. There was quite a bit of settlements in Orion. So Orion is a huge constellation. When you look in the sky, you can always find Orion. It's big. A lot of people see the belt stars. So I call Orion the melting pot of the galaxy because there was a lot of different species of beings that were settling there after the wars. And so I do believe that the story of Star Wars, the whole movie saga, is based on the Orion Wars. So because you had reptilians there, you had gray aliens, you had humanoids, everybody was all mixed together. There was a lot of fights and conflicts over territory, and there was actually a reptilian empire, that was trying to take over everything, just like they did in Lyra. And so there was a lot of wars. So there was a resistance group in the belt stars that were trying to fight for sovereignty. And so they called upon the Galactic Federation, which was a federation of benevolent beings that just wanted to keep peace and unity throughout the galaxy, to assist them. So how this relates to Earth, okay?
Go to break, but I want you to hold that thought. I mean, because what we all want to know ultimately is, how does that relate to us? Great. You're listening to What Is Going On. I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, and my guest today is ET contactee, interdimensional traveller, galactic historian, and ascension coach Debbie Solaris, who, after a fateful ET contact experience, awakened to her true star lineage and higher calling, which is to be a conduit for galactic wisdom, sharing transformative insights that have the power to enlighten individuals about their divine essence and cosmic ancestry. We'll be back with more from Debbie Solaris in a few moments.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of Times flagship radio show, What Is Going On? And as an author, editor, and 13 times book judge who's read thousands of books and interviewed hundreds of authors, I'm constantly asked what's really worth reading and what's not. So I created the No BS Spiritual Book Club to help you save time and money by picking the brains of discerning names who've walked this path before you. There's no catch, no fees, and no BS. Just an ever-growing library of 10 best spiritual book lists from some of your favourite authors and teachers, plus free book excerpts, audios and video interviews with people like Don Miguel Ruiz Jr., David G., Lee Harris, Mark Nepo and more. From well-known classics to hidden gems you've never heard of, it's the only no BS guide to the best spiritual books to enlighten your journey of self-discovery. So why not join the club? Get inspired and save money at the nobsspiritualbookclub.com.
Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. Times Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, Times offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an Times magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on Times TV and broadcasting it across the extensive Times radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. Times. Open yourself to the possibilities.
Everything that we do, we can do in a contemplative manner. Through the art of contemplation, you can use the gene keys in a really powerful way. Gene keys is basically the code book of life. In the gene keys, the book is made up of these three levels: shadows, gifts, and cities. And the journey is through those three levels, kind of unpicking of the shadow states, the releasing of the gifts, and then the embodying of this higher consciousness called the city. And the cities are very exalted words. And it's not like we kind of suddenly are all these exalted Christ-like beings, but we have flashes and illuminations along the journey. And the more we get stuck into the journey, the more illumination comes to us, because the more we're releasing the light from in these codes inside our DNA. So all those revelations are inside us. So the contemplative way is the inner way.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Welcome back. Debbie Solaris, please continue.
Okay, so we were at the most interesting point where, so how does the Orion Wars relate to Earth? Okay, so the Orion Wars lasted for millions of years, and eventually the light, the Federation of Light, and also the resistance fighters did achieve unity consciousness throughout the Orion system. So there was, pretty much a merging of all these groups. However, there were some of the factions from the Empire that did not want to merge. They did not want to give up their control. So they were looking for new places to conquer. And they were looking at specifically our solar system, here on, here with our sun and our planets. Initially, they did colonize Mars and a planet called Maldek, which used to be located between Jupiter and Mars. So they were starting to have settlements in these systems or these planets. Because there was so many dark factions in Maldek went into a civil war and they destroyed their own planet. So a lot of these souls from Maldek ended up incarnating on Earth. So these were dark factions that were either coming to Earth or through way of Mars and Maldek came to Earth later. But so these were factions that basically wanted to find new systems to conquer. And Earth was a pretty pivotal point. It's a pretty nice planet. It's like, so they started infiltrating the Atlantean government, which caused, again, another civil war. Atlantis fell. And we plunged from the fifth dimension. So Earth was always supposed to be a fifth dimensional planet. It was supposed to be just a storehouse of beautiful DNA from many different star systems. But when these factions took over, they, Earth plunged into the third dimension, and we've been there ever since. So this is why things are the way they are. So these factions are still in power to a certain extent. So a lot of our royal families and the elites and the dark cabal, these are the descendants of these beings. So yes, they have reptilian DNA. They're not like us, So they've been trying to keep a stronghold on planet Earth ever since. So that's kind of like our galactic story in a nutshell. I mean, I didn't really get that much into the Pleiadians or the Sirians. They play a part in all this too. But I was trying to keep this as or share the story as succinctly as possible, but that's why things are the way they are here now, and why there's so many starseeds now trying to make changes.
Yeah. You said on your website that some of the draconians, there was 3 different levels of them, and some of them did turn to the light. So we have some here, presumably, that's just, that kind of DNA, but are not interested in, service to self.
Yeah, there's a few that, and I've seen this in the records. I've seen it. Some of my clients even have reptilian guides, depending on their own, star genetics. But there's a few of them that have turned to the light, and they actually become amazing healers. And I have done a few readings, Akashic readings, for folks that have dragon DNA. That they're incarnated into a human form, but their lineage is, dragon, and dragon is upper tier level reptilian, so they're more of a neutral stance. They're not necessarily like dark and evil, like the warrior caste, what I call the warrior reptilians. So a lot of them are here to try to be teachers and to heal the planet. A lot of dragon energy is mostly, I think, not so much focused on individual human healing processes, but more healing of the grid systems or healing of the environment, so that's usually what I see as a focus, with these types of beings.
So lots of people, today are very interested in this. I think that memories are beginning to resurface, and if it's not actual memories, there's a deep, attraction, a compelling draw to this information, as if the soul knows, even if their brains don't.
Yeah.
Where would you say we are at today? Why are there so many people waking up now?
Well, I think this goes back to what Dolores Cannon shared in her book, The 3 Waves of Volunteers in New Earth, which is one of the books we're going to talk about in your other series. But so she talks about how ever since World War II, there's been this huge influx of starseeds. And what is a starseed? Okay, so a lot of people hear this word, thrown around, especially in our spiritual community. So my definition of a starseed is somebody that's having a human incarnation here on Earth, but their soul is much older than Earth. So their soul originated from another star system, or another galaxy, or another universe sometimes, or even another reality. And so basically what happened, and this was something I saw on the Akashic records, was there was a big Galactic Council meeting. I think it was in Andromeda constellation. It was I think part of the Andromeda Council. So they were deciding, okay, or they were looking at, how are we doing on our overall evolution in this galaxy? And everybody was looking at Earth. So like, okay, we're doing pretty good with Orion. Orion's getting back on track, but Earth is still stuck in the 3rd dimension. So if Earth isn't able to ascend, the rest of the galaxy can't ascend any further. Okay, so this is why they're so interested in Earth. And they were concerned because there was not just 1, but 2 world wars. And the Second World War, there was atomic bombs that were, decimated Hiroshima, so they were concerned that Earth was going to blow itself up. And this was considered to be a living library for these extraterrestrial races. They donated so much DNA to this planet, they didn't want to see it get destroyed. So there was a lot of us, myself and a lot of other starseeds, and maybe even you too, that, we're all part of this, trying to expand consciousness on this planet. We decided to volunteer to be here, so that's why, hence the 3 waves of volunteers. Now, you and I are both first wavers, so we're part of the first wave generation of Starseed. So we were the teachers, the healers, the spiritual guides. We're not here to create old or break down old systems or create new systems. We're just here to start the process. Now the generations that are coming after us, that's the people that were born in the 70s and 80s, and then those that were born in the 90s and the 2000s. That's the second and the third wave. The second wave was more like the indigo children. So they were the rebellious ones. They were the ones that were really, questioning everything and, just really rebelling against the system. And then the kids that are coming in now, I call them kids, or some of them are adults now, but the younger generations, they're the system builders, so they're going to be the ones that are going to be creating the new Earth once we ascend. We are currently ascending, so I do believe that the planet is ascending, regardless of whether the humans are ascending. The planet is and is going to be ascending. I don't know if you've noticed this. You're in what, Australia or?
No, I'm in England.
Oh, you're in England. Okay, so so I don't know if you noticed it in Europe, but here in the United States, I know just here in Colorado, the sun looks different. It used to be yellow, now it's white, and everything is a lot more brilliant. Like, I'm looking at the sky. The sky is like a brilliant blue. There's like more layers of greens than we used to see. A lot sharper details. It's obvious that the frequencies are changing. So, and I think this is pretty much globally happening. To certain degrees. So. Maybe in higher vibrational places it's more evident, but I do think there's changes in England too, because I know a lot of people are doing events in Glastonbury and in the ancient sites, and there's a lot of crop circles in your area. So yeah, so I mean, so there's stuff happening there. And England, actually, this is something I saw on the records. I just want to bring attention to England because there were so many extraterrestrial colonies in England. And I saw this in the records. I was like, why were they so focused on England? And the reason for that is all the ley lines that were coming through in your particular location on planet Earth. And I do think at Glastonbury is like one of the Earth chakras, or so the extraterrestrial beings knew that there was like a special energy in your location. And so the races that I saw that were predominantly focused in your area were the Andromedans, which is really interesting because I see a lot of Andromedan DNA amongst, some of the British starseeds I do readings for. So there's and a lot of Lyran. So King Arthur was trying to bring back Avalon. Avalon originally was a Lyran planet, so so I don't think that's a coincidence. Okay. So
No, sure.
so there's a lot of energy that's happening in your area as well. And I do get a lot of awakened starseeds in England. So
Yeah. For such a small country, I know that there's a lot going on.
there is a lot going
We
on.
can't say that we,
Yeah.
and some that we can. Obviously, one of the first questions people must ask when they meet you is, how do I find out where I'm from? What do you say to them?
I always say inherently, I think you always know, like you always, I think people get really disconnected from themselves. I know that sounds pretty basic, but I always tell them to meditate on it and to ask their guides. And usually, like if you hear the word Pleiades, does your heart like spring, happiness when you hear that word? Or if you hear Sirius, Sirius B, does it make you want to go back home? So I think intuitively we kind of know already. Of course, they can always come to someone like me or, other people for readings. But I honestly believe we know ourselves, it's so if somebody comes for instance, to me for a reading, it's usually because they just want confirmation. I think they already know they're a starseed. They already know the systems that they're connected with, but maybe they're just looking for external confirmation of that.
And then what? I mean, what do people do once they know? Do they feel like, okay, now I know, what am I here to do? Must be the next thing.
It kind of like, I think if you have an Akashic reading, particularly, I guess, a galactic Akashic reading, it acts as an activation. So at that point, people, I think it's just like a remembrance, like, oh, yeah, this is what I'm connected with. And this is why I am the way I am. I know when I discovered I was Arcturian, it's like, oh, that explains a lot, so I've noticed, throughout, doing thousands of these readings throughout the last decade or longer, that there are certain traits that are associated with certain star lineages. So for instance, Arcturians are really interested in technology. We like technology, but then also we're great healers. So and we tend to be introverts. So I mean, I'm an introvert. So and so when I find that out, I was like, oh yeah, that was why I worked in the IT field for a number of years, and why I was interested in science, and why I'm an introvert. So it's stuff like that kind of starts making sense. Like, oh yeah, that's why I am the way I am. And then it also gives you an insight into your mission. So what am I here to do? So if I'm a Pleiadian starseed, for instance, maybe I'm meant to work with animals. A lot of Pleiadian starseeds are very empathic and they love animals. A lot of them go into wellness careers, so I see a lot of Pleiadian starseeds that are dietitians or yoga instructors, or they teach or they work with Reiki, or they do hypnotherapy, so so there's certain trends with that. And so when I do a reading for someone, it gives me a clue once I figure out what their star system of origin is. Like, okay, these are probably the areas that you gravitate towards. And more often than not, they'll say, yes, how'd you know that? Because it's part of your star lineage. So yeah, it does give great insight.
You train a lot of people to read the Akashic records so that they can help others, these questions. You also have a number of different webinars on your website. Two of them I'm sure people would be very interested in, which is the Mastering the Starseed Health webinar and the Rejuvenation one, the anti-aging webinar.
Yeah, those are the two. Those two are really popular. That and the Discovering Your Star Origins. That's another real popular one. That was comprised of years of doing these readings. I kept seeing health trends with certain, star lineages. And I went through my own health recovery journey myself, which, maybe that's a conversation for another time. But I was always really interested in, okay, why am I seeing fibromyalgia amongst all these Lyran starseeds? So it's just comprised of years of doing this work. And I do offer that, and that's available just through the training page on my website. Anybody can go on there and just sign up for it.
In the same way that, we inherit DNA from our parents, etc. And, propensities for certain diseases and conditions, the same would apply with the different races that, Lyrans might have this particular weakness and Pleiadians something else.
Oh, totally. Yeah, speaking of Pleiadians, I saw a lot of diabetes, so it's like, why this particular, and it's, just genetic tendencies, so like I said before, we're all kind of the Science 57 of different extraterrestrial races, as far as our human genome here on Earth. So it would make sense that we would inherit, some of these tendencies from our star, star heritage, and our star lineage. And as far as Akashic readings, I do offer a course once a year. This year, we're going to offer it in the fall. In past years, we've offered it in the spring, but we're kind of reconfiguring the course, trying to make it a little bit more streamlined for folks. So if people are interested in doing what I do, we're going to train you how to do it, but it is a 6 to 8 week course, so it's this whole certification thing. So that's available as well. If you're interested in that, just sign up, subscribe to my website.
You are doing an Ancient Souls Remembrance retreat on the Big Island in Hawaii,
Yep.
end of February, beginning of March. That sounds interesting.
Yeah.
We only have a couple of minutes left. One of the things that I would like to do before we have to end this conversation, and I hope we can continue it another time, is to ask you, you read the Akashic records, where are we headed, right? Is it
That's a good ending question, I guess. Well, I think right now we're in a process of great clearing, just individually and also collectively. I think that's why we're seeing things going to hell in a handbasket, with the LA fires and all the commotion that's happening, throughout the planet. And I do believe that the dark cabal beings that I mentioned before, they're pulling out all stops. They're just trying to really stop our ascension. I mean, they're doing everything they can to keep humanity contained, and we're not going to stay contained. There's just no way. But so I think the next couple of years is going to be pretty bumpy. It's going to be, we're going to see more of a separation between those of us that are on the ascension path and those of us that decide to stay in the 3D. And there'll be this separation between dimensions. We're currently seeing it now, but it's going to become even more prominent, in the next couple of years. I do believe we're heading to a golden age, and it is going to happen in our lifetimes. We're going to see extraterrestrial technologies being more prevalent, particularly free energy and medbed technologies, and just technologies are going to help us live much better lives. But I think we have to get through this rough period first. But yeah, we are heading to the 5th dimension. I do think that definitely is going to happen in this lifetime.
Yes, I agree with you. Debbie Solaris, we're out of time now, I'm afraid. I really would encourage you to go to Debbie's site if you are interested in learning more about humanity's galactic history and your own, and the Earth experiment. You'll find all the information there. So, Debbie, your webinars and classes are all listed on your website, debbiesolaris.com. I think you've got a Conscious Life Expo appearance coming up as well.
I'll be at Conscious Life. So if you're in the LA area, please come and see me at the Conscious Life Expo. And then if you're interested, I don't know if there's any spots left, but you might want to check. But I am doing the Ancient Souls retreat in Kona, Hawaii, which is in the Big Island. So that's the end of next month. So it's going to be an extraordinary experience. And then there's other events too, but you can always check that on my events page. So that's pretty much it.
Debbie Solaris, thank you for joining me.
Thank